there are many of our people who are thinking more deeply and more broadly, looking at it as it actually is, and are beginning to see it more in the international context and the relation that it has with the African struggle, a human rights struggle, or the struggle for human rights. And as such, we can then take it into the United Nations.
And bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
Hello everyone, this is We Charge Colonialism's page. We Charge Colonialism, we are an organization that seeks to raise awareness of the fact that Africans in the United States are being colonized inside of our communities. Whenever we leave out of our communities, we are a colonized people. And the purpose of raising awareness on our condition is that we start calling these systems that oppress us what they are. They are not just systems of exploitation or discrimination, they are systems of colonialism. The quicker that we call them what they are, the quicker that we can actually organize and exercise the right to self-determination, meaning the right to control our own affairs, control our own communities, and the right to control our own livelihood. Right now, our livelihood is in the hands of a system that does not regard us as worthy of life. It's in the hands of a system that does not care to ensure that we are even afforded the basic rights that we should be afforded. And that kind of goes to the heart of what I want to talk about today. So first, I want to say to everyone who is dealing with this, I can't even say who's affected by the coronavirus, because literally every single country, every single person, we're all affected by the coronavirus, whether we know it or not. So I'll say this to everyone. I really do hope that everyone is being safe. The projections of what could happen with this disease, I keep hearing something like 40 to 60% of people could be affected. That is alarming, and it doesn't mean that that is what is going to happen, but it certainly means that we should all realize that we are affected, and therefore we have to exercise wisdom and not put ourselves in a position where we could cause harm to not only ourselves, but to our family members. And so obviously, this is a time where we have to be careful and be very mindful. Every single time we leave the house, we have to be mindful that you don't know. You could be walking past someone that is infected. You could be touching a surface that has the disease on it. And keeping that mindfulness is essential, if not for yourself, just for your children or for your elders. This is the type of community minds that I want to enforce, because right now what we're seeing is how much selfishness exists inside of, particularly I'm gonna say, American society. My other subscribers who are outside of America, I'm sure many of you have also seen the same things. And I think what the coronavirus reveals is just how flawed the system that was created is, just how sick it is. We could go to the economics, and then we could go to the personal. Actually, let's start with the personal part of it, the part where people are so selfish. People are so individually minded, and this is something that is a feature of Western society. When you study the different societies and the different cultures around the world, what you realize is that the clash that always happened with the colonist versus the colonized is that the colonists always come to enforce a system on the people based on individualism, based on the idea that the individual matters more than the community. That is what Western society practiced. Now, when they would go in different parts of the world, whether they were going to Africa, whether they were going to the Americas, they encountered people who had a communal lifestyle. Communal meaning the community was prioritized over the individual. So this idea that I just need to get me and mine's, me and mine's, me and mine's, these are all mindsets that were enforced on us by a westernized society. And when you think about it, which mindset actually helps in the greater scheme of things? Because what we have seen from this virus is that the individual mindset, the individualism that is so great in a society, is doing a number on us, because when you have people who are selfish, they do not care about their neighbors, they do not care about the fact that there are elders, that there are older people in the community who actually need access to resources. What do? You see people going in and taking everything that they do not need. This is the feature of capitalism. This is why I try to say this over and over, particularly on my channel African Esquire, is that we have to distance ourselves from capitalism. I know that you have been taught and ingrained with the idea that capitalism is the only system. Socialism is an evil system. This is something that has been taught to us. But understand, who are the people who taught you this? Who are the people who taught you that it's better to be capitalist? It's the same people who enslaved you. Understand that the first global system of capitalism was slavery. That was capitalism. You had individuals going in for themselves and saying, we're going to take a resource, and in that case, it was our ancestors who were human labor to them. We're going to take them, and we're going to take them for ourselves, and we're going to claim ownership over them. That was the beginning of global capitalism. That was the beginning of this global system that we see today. Understand that it's rooted in what happened to our ancestors hundreds of years ago. So when you have a system like that and you're so defensive of it, I don't get it. How could you defend a system? And understand, when I condemn capitalism as a social system, I'm not saying buying and selling and trading. That in itself is not capitalism. And that's where I think a lot of people get confused. Capitalism is the idea that individuals, not the community, again, the individualistic system versus the communal system. Individuals have a right to things that should be owned by the community. So whether it's something like healthcare, where you would think that we're talking about something that should be basic life, basic living, not just for myself, for your family, for all of our families, we would think that that's something that should be used for the community, and instead of being used for these individual corporations who are going to exploit people. This is a great example of how the coronavirus has shown how flawed this thinking is. Because when you think about what's happening, think about the fact that they have a healthcare system that does not have access to materials that are going to save people's lives. They're running out of masks. They're running out of protective suits. They're running out of the things that would help people. That's because it's owned by individuals, and these individuals are price gouging. So this is what capitalism does. It puts our future and our livelihood in the hands of people who are not communally minded. They're individually minded. It puts our day-to-day lives in the hands of people who do not care about you. So when we go back to the history again of what happened, we have our people, African people, study African culture, study European culture. What you'll see is that European culture at one point was also communally minded, but at some point it started, particularly during the Industrial Revolution, it started to turn away from the communal mindset and started to turn towards the individual mindset. And all of this was in reaction to conditions to where they thought that if I don't do something for me, that we're not going to be able to survive. But always consistently, this has come at the detriment of a people, and it's always in the sense of America has come to the detriment of our people. Because when you look at even people who we categorize as white today, understand that the Irish were not originally categorized as white. The Italians were not originally categorized as white in America. The Jewish people were originally not categorized as white. And so at different points in history, it will fluctuate as far as who's going to be the people who are going to have to suffer in order for the individuals who have power to live. And so when it wasn't the people like the Europeans who were categorized as non-white, when it wasn't the Native Americans, it was us. And so the fact that we're so defensive of a system that has been built off of our exploitation and been built on the profits of another people, that I will never understand. The idea of Black capitalism is a myth. If we're talking about Black people owning the means of production, tell me how many Black people, compared to those who are suffering from the healthcare system, how many are actually in a condition of power over the system? How many of us are in a condition of power over the manufacturing sphere? How many of us are over conditions of power inside of any industry that we want to talk about? nine times, not even 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the time, we're not going to be in a position of power. And that 1% of the time, those few people who actually do appear to have some type of power inside of these industries understand that these people, at a lot of times, have had to compromise and have had to be put into position by people who are against us. And it can be confusing for us because sometimes we'll see ourselves inside of positions of power and want to celebrate it. I see it all the time on social media. They'll say, oh, the first CEO of, I don't know, Comcast or something like that, or the first Black CEO of NBC. These are things that are put in front of us and we're supposed to celebrate it. And then we also hear, oh, this person is giving this much money to a HBCU, which is awesome. But understand that even though this person could be the most good-willed person, could love Black people, could say, okay, I'm going to try to do stuff for people. When you look at the end result of having those types of systems in power over our people versus the benefits versus the benefits versus the detriments of the system, if you compare the benefits that we as a people get to capitalism versus the negatives versus the cost versus the detrimental effects that it has, you have to see that there are more costs than benefits for our people. And honestly, the thing that coronavirus showed, it's actually for all people. It's not just for our people. We always get it worse. But understand right now, this is what happens when you have elderly people of all colors who can't even get toilet paper because you have people running to the store and taking everything when they don't need it. That is literally what happened with Africa. When we look at our continent, our homeland, they took things when they didn't even need them, and they kept them, and they still have them, and they don't even need them. Look at who's the people who are starving. Look at the people who are not in control of their resources. Look at the people who are looking for some type of means of income for their family. It's not them who needs the resources that they stole. It's us. That is the central feature of capitalism. So going back to the coronavirus, on a personal level, when you look at the character flaws of what capitalism creates, it creates this selfishness, it creates this self-centeredness, and I'm happy that it's being exposed because this is an opportunity for us to challenge ourselves, and particularly people in the African American community. It's an opportunity for us to challenge ourselves and say, is this what we really want to be about? Is this who we want to reflect? We really want to reflect the people who have oppressed us. To me, if you're thinking for yourself and not thinking for others, you are being a direct reflection of the person who puts you in chains. You're not above them. You're not just reacting. If you're only thinking about self, you're doing what they did. And a lot of times, because of those who are in proximity to you, they don't look like them. They look like us. You're hurting your people, not those who are on the outside. So that's the personal level that I think we really have to challenge. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm working from home for a while, so let's challenge us together because apparently we have a lot of free time for who knows how long. Let's talk about the systemic level. The system has shown just how flawed it is, and it's a complex thing because all of us, we're in the system. So all of us, we have jobs, or we might have businesses. And although we are victims of the system, we're still in the system. So although we're victims, if the system goes down, because we're in the system, we're going down with the system. But the system inherently is flawed, which to me should be alarming to our people, and say that, do we really feel like this is the right system for us to be in? When all you have to do is see how Wall Street is affected by this, because it's so funny how you have people who will bail out Wall Street, and we're not even thinking about the fact that Wall Street never bails out the people of America, right? So the economy is going down. People are buying and selling, but then they just start selling, and they know that the selling obviously is going to hurt America. But again, what is the mindset? It's an individual mindset. It's not, we need to hang in there and push through to help the industries. No, they know that, hey, we want to make sure that we secure our assets, and if that takes down the American economy collectively, then so be it. Understand, this is what all of our livelihood is based on. A system of Wall Street where they will sell us out, right? But if we actually let them fall, like happened in the foreclosure crisis. They get a bailout, but no one's gonna bail people out who are now without who are going to be without hospital beds, who are not going to have the medical supplies. When are these rich people going to bail them out? That's what I want to know. Because there's people who can do individual things on a small scale, but when are you actually going to directly contribute to the uplift of all the people and not just some of the people? And this is the systemic flaw that we have to understand, is that we're too dependent on an industry that has no regard for our humanity. We're too dependent on Wall Street. We're too dependent on these banks. We're too dependent on these Fortune 500 corporations. And these corporations have no allegiance to us, have no allegiance to our people. And then when you also look at what's going on in different facets of society, understand that the people who are going to be hurt most from this are going to be the people who look like us. Because guess what? Look inside of the different industries. Look inside of the fact that Black people we are the most uninsured. Then look at the prison industry. Understand that we have the highest the vastly highest prison population in the United States. Our people are made up of a great percentage of the prison population. What do you think is going to happen? And if it has not already happened, because we don't even know who has this virus or who doesn't, what do you think is going to happen when this unleashes in a prison? Do you think people are going to go in and try to save them? Do you think that they're going to try to ensure that social distancing is being enforced? Of course not. This is the system that was created. This is the system that says that, hey, them last, us first. And this is the system that we've subscribed to. Even I read a story in Detroit. The people, the city was supposed to stop the turning off of utilities, because obviously if people are out of work, they can't pay their utilities. But guess what? They're still trying to push on and close these utilities. Why? Because they have no affinity for the people. They have no allegiance to us. They have allegiance to themselves. Understand, this is the system that our lives depend on. Let that sink in. See how it's falling apart. Don't think that the coronavirus is just the only thing that we have to get past, and there's not going to be something else equally or worse that comes along that's going to just as much rattle this system. Because the thing that we have to understand that is different in the world today that was not the case before is globalization, meaning this virus began in Wuhan region of China and went all over the world, because we're inside of a world where the whole world is very much connected. And basically, if one country coughs, the whole world catches a virus. And that's not going back anytime soon. Certainly not for our people, because our people, unfortunately, are always in the position of being dependent on these outsiders. So, in closing, again, we're talking about colonialism. The colonial system, we have to reject the colonial system. This is what the system is. Wall Street is a colonial system. The healthcare industry is a colonial system. All of these are colonial systems, and you have these rich and profitable corporations that are in the position of power over us who have no power. And as this virus has shown, as in every system of colonialism, you are at the mercy of your colonizer. We're at the mercy of Donald Trump to do the right thing. Think about that. We are in the mercy of someone who has a long history of racism against our people, has a long history of seeking policies against our people. And even if Trump's not in office, we'll be at the mercy of Joe Biden, who has just as long of a history, because Joe Biden is likely basically winning the nomination, right? Who also has a long history. Regardless of who, we're in the mercy of people who don't have our interest in mind. If you think they have your interest in mind, tell me a president that has had the interest of African people in mind. Please tell me. And when you go through every one of them, because there is none, what you're going to have to realize is that this system is such a system that we're at the mercy of people who don't have our best interests at heart. And we're going to have to either make peace with that and have peace with that, looking at our children, knowing that they live in this world and that they're at the mercy of people who have been, in many regards, are the enemies of our people. Or we're going to say that there has to be another way. That is my hope for this, that it's not an opportunity lost, that African people wake up. And I'm encouraged that there is some waking up going on. For example, on the continent, who would have ever thought that African countries would close their borders to European countries or close their borders to China. Who would have thought that? I didn't see that coming. But apparently, for some people, there's going to have to be a time where things have to get so bad that it really makes you question these relationships that we have, that are always relationships of exploitation, and make us question our openness to outside societies. That is, if anything, what I hope we will benefit from this crisis. So I think that's all. Again, I hope you all are being safe. And I would encourage those of you who have extra time, because I know I do, um, let's start thinking about after this. Because, what are they saying? This could go, hopefully, it doesn't go to next year, but they're saying that this virus can go on until the summer, the late summer, and there's going to be an after. And one thing that I want us to keep in mind is that every single crisis that has happened in history has always been an opportunity for something. So I'll give you an example. World War II, horrible war. Many people died, right? But World War II, because it, number one, weakened a lot of the European economies. And number two, a lot of African people, particularly both from the United States and from the continent of Africa, fought in World War II. And they fought in World War II. They fought the most horrible conditions. They fought the most grueling circumstances, and then went back to the countries where they originated from. And the oppressors thought that we're going to continue this exploitative relationship, or we're going to continue oppressing you. And guess what? These people said, "Oh, hell no. Like, I just risked my life for you, for your country. You're not going to treat me the same way." And so World War II became a awakening for a lot of Black people in the United States too. What you see is that people came back to the United States and they're like, "What? You're still going to try to treat me like this? You're still going to treat me like I'm not nothing? Oh no, this is not happening." And at that point, the mindset shifted, because what they realized is that they had nothing to lose. And that's a powerful thing. When you have faced death, when you have faced destruction, when you have faced losing all of your economic viability, and you now are going back to the system, and the system is going to try to continue business as usual, and your mind has shifted to where there's no business as usual anymore. I have nothing to lose. You've taken everything from me already. I know what it means to be poor. I know what it means to almost die. I know what it means to see my brothers and sisters die right next to me. That is a powerful mindset. And that led to the decolonization of Africa, believe it or not, because right after World War II, the African people weren't having it anymore. So I say that to say every single crisis is an opportunity in a lot of ways. You can also consider what happened with the Vietnam War. A lot of Black people fought in that war, and we know that as a result of facing that, they came back to the United States and they said, this can't happen anymore. And that's where a lot of the Black Power movement was driven by the anti-war sentiment. So these catastrophes, they're opportunities. Don't always think about the day to day, but plan for the future. Get through the day. Think about the fact that you have your children to tend to, your elders, your people to ensure are okay. Hopefully, you're not just thinking about your family, but you're looking out for the people down the block. And that's something that I really hope we learn out of this, is to stop just thinking about ourselves and to start thinking about, go check on that old lady down the road that lives alone. Go see, make sure she's okay. Obviously we have to think about ourselves in this think about ourselves as a community in this regard. But we have to think about the afterwards. What opportunity will this present for our people? What revelations will be found for our people? I'm of the mindset that, white supremacy has sucked so much blood out of its victims that at some point it just has to stop. And that this could be one of the stopping points. And so if we're mindful, and I'll just say one more thing, just use this opportunity as some time to study. If you're home, and if you're where I am, every single person is ordered to stay home unless you're an essential, meaning police department or restaurant, and you can only do takeout. So I assume most of my followers in the United States are home, particularly us who live near major cities. So take this time to read and sharpen your knowledge because, like I said, there's going to be a different situation when this is over. I've never seen anything like this happen in my lifetime, and I'm sure none of you have either. So there's going to be a different world when we get out of this. There's going to be a different mindset that is going to be had around the world and a different awareness, hopefully, from our people. So this is the planning period, and we'll see what happens, what the future presents. But I'm hopeful, and I believe that a lot of us are going to be ready for the next step. So that's all I have for this. If you are interested in joining We Charge Colonialism, you can email us at wechargecolonialism@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, wechargecolonialism.org, where you can learn more about us, and you can also submit an application through the website. But overall, guys, I hope that you are doing well and safe. I will see you guys in the next video.